My love-hate relationship with this series, The Class of '09, continues. Give my thoughts and reactions to the fifth episode called The Problem is People right after the jump. Hello, everyone. Terrence here with Hollywood Already Did It. If you haven't already, go ahead, like, share, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, ring that bell below. Anytime we have something, you will be among the first to know. Continuing that road of Class of '09, I was being a bit tongue in cheek when I said I love hate. It's been more mediocre. Don't love or hate. It's just kind of been there. But there are folks here who are watching these reviews, and I appreciate you guys very dearly, that have told me to keep pushing through and keep watching. And I'm doing this for you. Turns out, though, this episode I actually did really enjoy. Like, this is one of the few episodes that we've had out of this short season that I felt, now they're telling me something, or they're moving the storyline, or giving me this is what this series is about. In this episode called "The Problem Is People," we actually get, for the first time in a while, a decent amount in all three time frames: the present, past, and the future. Let's start off in the past with our main team right after the firearms training that we sort of saw in the last episode. They're there and they're kind of visiting a memorial where they have seen where all the fallen, like they have the plaques for all the fallen FBI soldiers. So it's kind of morbid because there's also spaces left for what will inevitably be future fallen soldiers. It's kind of just a reminder that what they're doing is important and that there's weight to it and there's some gravitas to it all. Like you're not superheroes, and that there can be some ending to this, but you will do this for the betterment of the world, for the betterment of the country, and this is where you sort of go to be memorialized. Staying with the past, as I'll do these in that order. The team go to see the MLK exhibit that exists. They're going to look at the church and the home, all that stuff. One important piece is that Poet is doing everything humanly possible based on what Drew said in the last episode to keep Lennox at bay. Everybody knows that they're in a relationship, but she is going to say, hey, let's not make it over obvious. Let's not rub it in people's faces. Let's not do that. Let's keep it sort of hidden and not scream from the rooftops that you and I are a couple. But Lennox kind of wants to wear his heart on his sleeve and show, hey, like, I want to be around you. I want to be you. And as we have learned, Poet, while she's a bleeding heart to everybody else, she doesn't really want to have that showing towards Lennox because for her, she can't live down if this breaks up. Her career is more important than that. While at this MLK exhibit, we see the first time where Teo meets his wife, which will be known as Dr. McMahon. She's the one giving them the tour, and she sort of asked the tour, hey, don't come in your FBI garbs, don't wear any of your FBI stuff. And Teo is the only person who kind of questions her, and I'm like, hey, why do you not want us to wear that? To which she says the FBI issued an order to Dr. King to be killed because of what it was doing to the community. The FBI is like, hey, you should probably die. And so because the FBI folks had a death wish for Dr. King, she's like, I just don't think it would be in good taste for you guys to come to this exhibit and wear those uniforms. So they go through the exhibit, they go whatnot. Teo and Dr. McMahon keep giving each other the flirty eye. He feels that there's some type of connection with her, but doesn't really make a move. So they go back to the bus. They're going back to the bus, and Lennox is still trying to say, like, I want to scream from the rooftops. I want everybody to know this. And Poet's like, nah, we good. I don't want everybody to know. I want to keep this to the vest. To which Teo sort of overhears it and kind of is like, this is my time. I got to make a move. I got to go try and do this now. So he goes and asks Drew and his other trainer, whose name escapes me at the moment, like, hey, I know this is unorthodox. I know this isn't normal. Can I just take a minute before we leave? And they're like, we're about to leave now. Drew kind of knows what's going on. He's like, yeah, we're normally supposed to clock this stuff, but we're not going to clock this. We're gonna let this go. And he goes back after it and he makes his move on Dr. McMahon. And thus, the rest is history, as you would say, because we've seen in the present and the future that they end up together, at least in the present. Future, we'll come back to in a bit. In the present, we see the aftermath of the bombing that took place in the last episode, which left us on a bit of a cliffhanger. We see that the collapsing of the building happened on top of both Lennox and Poet. This is what causes both of them to lose the appendages that they lose. We see Lennox's arm is gone, is badly damaged. He says over here, like, I can't feel my arm. She's like, nope, it's still there. And we can see that she has basically the Nick Fury eye happening on her left side, which eventually, as we get into the future, we then heal up, clean up, but have to remove the eye and give her a false one that is more cybernetic. So this is sort of the precipice that starts that for them. But while they're there under the rubble, they don't know if they're going to be rescued. And Lennox, they think this is the end for them. And Lennox lets him know, like, I should have said this all this time, but I love you. Twitch Poet does not respond, or at least say it back. And she's kind of operating there like, no, we're going to get out of this. We're going to be fine. And it seems like it's going to be pretty dire until they do start hearing voices in the distance that say anybody's there, and then they are rescued. And then we jump, and still in the present, we jump ahead 2 years. And we see Teo have to go to a committee about the bombing that occurred at the FBI agency. He's at this committee, and he's being questioned about the failures of not being able to be ahead of this attack. Why were we susceptible to this? Why were we not ahead of this? His wife, Dr. McMahon, is there and comes in and sees the hearing. What he says is this hearing is pretty damning on the community, but it is something that we, as a world, always sort of have to kind of weigh ourselves or battle back and forth with. Like, is doing the norm or doing what we always do the way to do things, or should we change it up a little bit? Just trying something new to see if we can buck the system or change the system or create something new. And it's the always the habit of the chicken or the egg, and you get into this situation where folks are so used to what they've always done that they're afraid to step out and do something new. But what he says is that we have the information. We have the information. We knew this person. We knew Mark. We knew what he wanted to do. We knew we wanted to hit the FBI. We knew he wanted to kill my wife. But what we did not have was the proper way to sort of read this information. We didn't have the right way to sort of distill this to the point where this is our guy, this is what he's doing, blah, blah, point A, point B, point C. He says that if we rebuild the FBI headquarters, if we rebuild Quantico, if we do all of that stuff back the way that we did, we will be attacked again. Like, this is going to occur again. It's inevitable. Like, we're going to end up in a cycle where this happens again because we have not protected ourselves to do so. After the hearing, he meets with the senator at that time face to face, and he doubles down on it, what he was saying. He's like, look, we're too dependent on prejudices and biases that the people who are sifting through all of this have. Like, they may not be looking at all the facts, but they kind of have settled, like, this is the person we're going to go with, and my biases or whatever, however I feel, this is the person that we're going to stick with. And so they'll never have time to sort of find out what's right in front of their nose because of all of their inherent people's inherent biases, and whatever they're saddled down with in life shapes the way that they look at criminal behavior or not criminal behavior. And so he's suggesting that, hey, we should probably use some artificial intelligence to kind of help at least dilute this down a little bit so that we can take out some of the biases and we can kind of get that answer. Now, there's still be oversight of humans, but we should use this as an aid to help us kind of get there faster and cleaner. The senator that time was like, nah, that ain't going to work for us. I don't want to be the one who upends tradition. Tradition is a big thing for just the world, us as a community. That's just the way that things go. Tradition is the strong suit. He said something to the effect of, like, from tradition, this is the stepping stone, and you build bricks on top of it. You put bricks on top, you put bricks on. I don't want to be the person that stops building those bricks and knocks that all down. I don't want to upend the people that preceded me. I don't want that on me. And so nobody's willing to kind of step out there on the ledge to sort of come up with a new inventive way to do this, except for what it looked like Teo. So Teo reaches out to Amos, who was the person that sort of gave the warning to Poet in the future about Teo and artificial intelligence. What he's doing is Amos is responsible for has come up with this very intuitive system that does a lot of the thinking, but is being used for mundane things like as suppose who's the person that wants to have this half discounted deal in front of them, like basically for Facebook and mundane things like that. It's not used for anything that is of a major purpose. And so Teo meets with him and said, "Hey, look, I think we should be using this for something else. I think there's another way for your system to work that will benefit the FBI." What is a weird thing that Teo does, and this is something that sort of has formed me, this is why we've heard about him having these racial incidents where he got pulled over and slapped and some of the racial biases that he has. He leans into that with Amos about you and I being the black and brown folks, we can kind of spearhead this so that a lot of the racial biases that exist are thrown out the window. Like those aren't what decide this person's guilty because of a racial bias that we have. We throw that out and we look at the actual just facts. We just look at what's actually there. And your system can help us do that by creating something new that doesn't rely on human error, if you will. In the present, we also check in with Poet and Lennox. Poet is still doing FBI field work, but she lives alone. There's nobody else there. She's whatever love she has ignored and is diving deep into FBI work. Lennox has subsequently gotten married and has kids and has a family, but they still check in with each other. You can tell that he still cares about love. Now it's interesting in this we see that Lennox's family has upended and left. That she's got a note like I'm staying with so and so. Clear that their marriage isn't going on the best. It's probably because Lennox, as he said in that rubble, I love Poet, is in a loveless relationship. Like he's in that because he's the man. He's like, probably got her pregnant, but he clearly does not love her, and that's why he didn't seem that really upset that she even left the note. He's like, all right, well, cool. Let me go ahead and talk to Poet because that's who I reach in. And she probably knows that Poet's always sort of been there. So there's probably that just they live separately. They are in relationships with their work separately, but they still have this longing for each other that Poet won't allow, which is why in the last episode, Lennox is like, you are an impossible person to love. This is why. There's an important piece of this because Poet does mention, like, hey, do you remember the time in the rubble? Or like, remember what you said in the rubble? Or like, remember any parts of the rubble? And he's like, no, I don't remember that, which I call BS on. I think he remembers. But he doesn't want to let her know that, yeah, I'm not repeating. I'm not saying I love you again because you know what I said. So if you feel that way, you can repeat that back to me. She just wants him to hear it say it again, probably some type of validation. But they're like, nope, we're not saying that again. Then the next piece of the present sort of shapes who and why Teo is so adamant to kind of change the system and why he's so for AI. Or and Teo have sort of created this task force and are leading this team that has been given information about a bombing or a hostage bomb situation that is occurring in a synagogue, I believe it was. And they've gotten information based on our system that there isn't a real bomb there. Like these people, they have wires, they have something that looks like what would be set up for a bomb, but nobody here has a true bomb on them. And so that is when Or gives Teo, like, no, we're good. We can clear. She's like, are you sure? Can we take the shot? She's like, nope, we're good to take the shot. They take the shot, kill the folks, and then they start escorting the hostages out. But as the hostages come out, they start kneeling over, and basically dying. To which Teo's like, what the hell is going on? And what we find out is that people, human error, have been basically like these gaming blogs, almost like a I won't say Reddit, but like a 4chan, I guess. I've never been one of those. You guys might be able to help me out a little bit more on that. But one of these boards have basically have gamers kind of coming up with new ideas, like, hey, this is what we should try. We should try this. We should try this. We should try this. And in this, they gave these folks the ideas that, hey, these folks have been dehydrated for so long of a time. When they give them water, let's put arsenic that's untraceable, whatnot, in there, and that's what kills these folks. These people are drinking water that was given to them, and thus end up dying. So that's when Teo's kind of like, what are we doing? What is this? How do we not see this? How do we not see this? How were we not a step ahead? How were we did not see this piece of this happening? To which Or kind of just says, look, no process, even as good as this AI is, no process that we have is going to be 100% foolproof and is not going to prevent any and every tragedy from happening. It's just that's just not how it's going to be. So Teo responds back like this isn't the database. The database works. That makes sense. The problem is the people, which I've always said, I'm not a people person. So I kind of agree with what Teo's saying, but he's saying the people that are sort of making the final decision aren't good enough. And for him, in his brain, he's saying, I'm good enough. I'm the one who can make that decision. You put this system into place, and I will be the one to go ahead and say yay or nay. So Amos comes to visit Teo and Dr. McMahon, and Teo's like, I have nothing to hide from her. She's in all this, and Amos comes to sort of pitch and sell the idea of how this system can work for him in the mode that he's thinking about changing things. It's like, hey, look, you guys as a community, police, FBI, CIA, always round up the usual suspects. Whenever something happens, you round up the usual suspects. With this system, what if a crime says everybody's a suspect? No matter what, every single person is a suspect. That way you're running through every database. If a person has an alias over here, hey, just check it anyway. You're going to still filter through, you're still going to go through that process, but you're not automatically starting with the same 10. So that eliminates all biases and any prejudices that a person may have, and you're leaving it up to the system to sort of funnel that down from a list of millions, billions of people down to like 2 or 3. And then as you keep adding data and data, more and more data to it, you start funneling that down more and more. So that once you give it enough, you feed this machine, this AI, enough data, it would eventually get down to a point where you have 1 or 2 people that you can arrest. And then it is up to you to decide who to arrest, and it's up to the person to make that call of arresting, kill, or not. Now, doing this ahead of the time, which is what we get to in the future, doing this ahead of the time, the law won't necessarily back that. But if you have all of these facts and you make that decision, you make that call, that should be left up to the agent, and the agent will be the one to make that decision. That's the present. In the future, we learn that Teo has been running rampant with this, and he is pretty much like the overseer. He believes so much in this AI, and he's like, nope, this works. And it's all good because I'm always at the key. I'm always at the ready. It all still has to come through me. Like there is a final decision maker. So in the future, we have our big 4, Murphy, Poet, Lennox, and Ower are all rounded up and what looks to be believed to be arrested. But they're basically being put into a situation where they're going to meet Teo face to face, and he greets them, and he's basically giving them a warning, like, "Hey, look, stand down. Whatever it is you're trying to do to stop this AI, stop it. This system is working. I need you to understand that and just accept it." And Poet, it's kind of like, you guys are making arrests that don't make sense, and you're telling us what to do and how to do it all by your hand. We don't have any information as to why this is the way we're looking at it or why we're going about it this way. You're just telling us that is the way that we should be doing it. And then that's when they're saying that this system was put into place to simply be advisory. Like that's what Amos was telling Teo back in the day. This was all just supposed to be in place as an aid with humans. They were supposed to be, you give us that information and you're held in check by the people. And Teo kind of is like, well, I'm the people. He's become very power hungry, but he's basically saying, I'm the people. I'm the one who makes that decision. And he says that kind of to the point where that senator was saying, when you start putting building blocks in, it's very difficult to go back. And he's saying, this is in place now. We can't return back to what we do. This is what it is. And if we go back, it's just going to cause a catastrophe. Like this has to continue the way that it is. Poet kind of reaches out to him and is like, hey, look, if you're in trouble, if you need something, we can help you. And Poet and Teo's like, look at you, still being the bleeding heart. I'm going to give this warning just this once time. Stay out of the way. Don't try to shut this down. That's all I'm going to give for you. We see a scene where Dr. McMahon is no longer married to Teo, but does still respect him, respect his ideals and what he has put into place. She's a judge now, or at least a former judge. But she's being talked about with the senator saying, hey, look, I'm worried that our justice system is just being put on autopilot. Like there's no research being done. There's no investigation. We're literally just trusting this AI to filter things down and give us that kind of like Minority Report, that red ball that is this person that's guilty. Whether or not they've actually done something or are about to do something, we just have to assume the system has said that that's the way, and we're going to go. And judge is kind of like, well, I trust Teo, and she's like, well, do you feel that same way if it was anybody else running this department but him? To which she really doesn't have an answer, but the answer is no. She still believes in him and believes in what he's doing. So there's that. I do think that they're not together anymore because this has kind of driven him mad. He's been so focused on falling head in for that he's kind of ignored his actual relationship. Our four try to meet with this senator who has sort of this plan. And Murphy mentions to Poet, like, hey, look, if we're going to try to meet this person and we have to cross this many places to get so, we're going to be followed and we're going to be seen. And Poet's like, no, I'm planning on it. Like, I want that to occur. So they meet at the church, which is supposed to be a safe place. Like, you're not supposed to have any issues there. They meet the senator there. The priest is there as well. They meet and they're conversing, and then all these drones start circling in around this church. What would believe is that it's trying to make an arrest. But one of the drones enters the church and they all try to escape him. Like, the preacher's kind of like, you guys go, I'll hang here. They're not supposed to do anything. This is a safe place. This is a church. So they let them go out the back door. And the pastor is there talking to the drone, like, hey, I know you can hear me on the mic. Shut it down. And Teo in the headquarters office comes in and just sees what's happening. He's like, what are we doing? Like, why is this occurring? And they're like, we're trying to stop it. Teo grabs the clipboard that's controlling the drone. He is trying to stop it and he can't. And that drone shoots the preacher. So even with Teo trying to shut it down, he couldn't, which means at this point, that system is no longer listening to Teo and no longer needs oversight by any human. So if the people are the problem, the system has also decided the people are the problem and now is shutting it out completely, which leads me to believe that while Amos was trying to warn Poet earlier in the series about Teo, it's clear that his idea was like, hey, no, let's just remove the people altogether. I feel like Amos's system got so involved that it's like, hey, we don't even need the humans. And Teo thought he still had some sense of control, and now it's clear that he doesn't. And now he's even questioning, like, oh crap, what have I done? Which is an interesting dichotomy. Like, this is the first time in an episode where you start having people kind of play with what it is. He's sitting there like all of the racial biases that he himself have because of the way the world has treated him as a black man have led him to kind of operate things in this manner. And now it might be too late for humanity. All right, fine. You got a good episode and you got me. This was good. And now I'm kind of like, all right, I need to see how this plays out. So I think the biggest thing that this show has going for it is to question your beliefs on whether or not you should have a police state or not police state, and what you have innate in you to decide what side of that and how far you're willing to go to sort of fix that. I think had this been obviously the senator, the straight white male, probably wouldn't have been even thought about. But because Teo comes from the background that he has, there's a lot more anger and a lot more hate. The world that existed in the past created this man that exists in the present to create and put us in a ass backwards way in the future. And it's fascinating to see how that all pendulum swings and comes together. But what did you guys think about this episode? Please leave your thoughts and comments in the comments below. If you haven't already, you can follow us on Twitter at HollywoodADI. You can hit us up on email at HollywoodAlreadyDid@gmail.com. We also have a podcast with the same name. That's on Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, any other place podcasts. We're there. Like always, I got my ticket. You got yours.